contributions of $1,000 for every newborn child, so they end up being quite wealthy. And our record tax cuts are projected to raise incomes for New Yorkers by over $8,000, Mike, on average. We're going to boost household take-home pay for you, the people in the room, over $12,000, and protect more than 405,000 New York jobs. And we got to protect the jobs. We can't let them go. Just say it again and again and again. You can't let these companies go. It's easy to say, oh, we don't like the companies. They're the ones that supply you with the money and the jobs and everything else. You got to cherish those companies. Whether you like them or not, you got to. Last month, the IRS issued the largest average tax refunds to New Yorkers in New York history. Think of it. You got back the biggest refund that you've ever had. And that's all over the country, by the way. But I was with the King of Saudi Arabia 2 years ago, and he's investing over $2 trillion here. We have $18 trillion coming in. But he said, and you might have heard, just a short time ago, he said, Mr. President, it's amazing. 2 years ago, you were a dead country, dead. We never thought anything was going to happen that could be good for your country. You were a dead country with a leader that was a not smart person. You were a dead country, and today you're the hottest country anywhere in the world. It's respected by everybody. We're respected by everybody. The stock market has just said 68 times during my short, a little bit more than a year, 68 days we hit all-time record highs. Since the election, adding $9 trillion in value to your savings and retirement accounts, 401ks. Your 401ks, does anybody have a 401k? Well, your people are going to vote for me then. There's no way. Will anybody with a 401k vote against Trump? Thank you. It's always risky to ask that question. Sometimes it's it could be a very dangerous way. But since I took office, the typical 401k is up more than $30,000. And I've created 300,000 jobs in the last 2 months, passing all expectation. Remember this, right now, more people are working in the United States than at any time ever before, by far. And in 16 months, we've lifted nearly 5 million Americans off of food stamps. And thanks to my strong tariff policy, now I get into a lot of trouble with tariffs because, you remember when I first came out? I love tariffs. And I said, I love tariffs. My favorite word in the whole dictionary. I love the word tariff. And the fake news, look at all of them back there. That's a lot of fake news. You know they hate me, but what do they cover me? But I said my favorite word in the dictionary is tariff. And they got after me and they said, he's a horrible human being. What about family? What about God? What about religion? What about love? So now I say it's my fifth favorite word that I've been, and I'm okay. But because of tariffs, we brought numbers into this country that in other words, if you make your product outside of the United States, to get it in here, you have to pay a big tariff. So what do? They build their factory in the United States. And even New York, with your bad policies, we have people coming here. I'm trying to get them to come to New York. We've also cut our gaping trade deficit by, if you cut a trade deficit by 1%, a half of a percent, you're a genius. I've cut it by 59%. It's because of tariffs, because the money we're being made. Is that right, Mr. Lutnick? Secretary of Commerce is here. Looks good, looks handsome. Recently, he doesn't look like Jackson. I'd rather look like him. I'll take Jackson any day. Under our leadership, factory construction is up, new residential construction is way up, and consumer spending is way up. American companies are ordering core capital goods to expand their operations at the highest rate in the history of our country. And last year, General Motors announced a new manufacturing investment of $1 billion in upstate New York to produce V8 engines, which they never would have done here. They were all made in Germany and other countries. Now they're making them here because if they don't, they have to pay a big penalty. And they're stamping them at my instruction, made in the USA. Made in the USA. Chobani is building a $1.2 billion dairy plant in Rome, New York, the largest investment in the history of the company, big company, and Micron. Boy, Micron's great. They're investing hundreds of millions. In fact, it'll be could be very close by the time they finish out, over $100 billion in Clay, New York. Anybody come from Clay? You will be there when you go up and look for a job. My administration and our allies in Congress are also fighting every single day to lower the cost of living. So I got into office, I won the election in a landslide, and I have a news conference. Thank God. I mean, not to brag, but if I didn't win the election, we were dead. The welfare was tripling and the business was leaving, and the $18 trillion would have been 18 trillion to the negative instead of the positive. We would have been a dead country. We would have been finished. It's true. We ended Joe Biden's insane electric vehicle mandate. That's where they wanted everybody to buy an electric car. And as I told Elon, I love electric cars, but Elon, it's not for everybody. You know, if we would build the charging booths, right, it would cost the country $4 trillion. No country can afford that. $4 trillion. You ever get an electric car and you sort of get nervous because you know your thing is down a little bit? Friends of mine tell me the story's down a little bit, getting close, and you look at what about a charging station? You know, this is an hour before it runs out. Where's the charging? And then you see it. It's a sign, and it says charging station, an arrow pointing to the right, 92 miles. And you limp in if you make it at all. No, we love electric cars. I have to say that because of Elon, but I love electric cars. They're lovely, lovely vehicles, but I said not everybody wants to have an electric car. And I ended that whole nonsense. By 2030, you're going to all have electric cars? I don't think so. How about California? They have electric cars. They don't have enough electricity to turn on your air conditioners. They have brownouts, and now everybody's going to have an electric car. That's one of the worst governors in the country, by the way. But he took himself, did you hear he announced he's taking himself out of the race? He called himself a dumb person. He got very low board scores. Everything he's done is tough, and he can't read a speech. He can't read a speech. So, I don't read too many speeches either. I'd be better off if I did. But he can't read a speech, but he called himself a dumb person. And when you do that, I say it, but a friend of mine, very good in politics, said, don't worry, people forget about it. I don't know. I don't think you can forget. I thought it was the worst. He did this during an interview. I thought it was the worst interview by a professional politician in the history of our country. Because Gavin, I think, is when he says he's stupid. He said he's stupid. But remember when he said he's smarter than the people in the room. And then he got sued for being a racist. And I guess he probably is a racist, but he said he was a stupid person. You'll never hear me call myself I'm the smartest guy you're ever going to meet. And don't you want to have a smart person as president? In fact, I took the cognitive test. I'm the only one. You know, they called me, originally they said, he's brilliant. He wants to take over the entire country. Then they said, no, he wants the world, he doesn't want the country. That's why he's in Iran, that's why he's in, and by the way, how did we do in Venezuela that bad? You know, we've taken out so much oil in Venezuela, we paid for the cost of the war about 25 times over. When did you hear that last? You know, it's a one-way street. But no, the doctor, I said, doctor, let me ask you a question. They called me genius, and that didn't work. Then they said he's totally brilliant. He's a vicious dictator who wants to take over. That didn't work. And then they called me this, and then they said, they hit me with a bad one. He's a dumb person. D-U-M. Not the B. He's a dumb person. It's enough. Most people don't know it has a B. He's a dumb person. I said, doctor, I don't mind being called a brilliant, total tyrant dictator, but I don't want to be called dumb. What do I do, doctor? Is there some kind of a test I can take? He said, actually, sir, there is. It's a cognitive test. I said, how many presidents have taken it? None. You know this story. No people have taken it. I said, well, is it good or bad? Is it tough? It's a tough test. It starts off easy, it gets very, very tough. I said, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take that test, I think, doctor, because I do good on tests. I'm going to take that test, and let's see how we do. He said, here's the problem, sir. If you do badly on the test, it's going to be reported because it's Walter Reed Medical Hospital. It's a military hospital. It's sort of public. So you have 5 doctors sitting there, and they're all, if you do badly on it, sir, and you could do badly, because, you know, the questions are very easy in the beginning, then pretty easy, then pretty hard. By the time you get to the end, there are not a lot of people in the room can get it, believe me. I said, well, it will be public, won't it? It'll be embarrassment, but let's do it. This wasn't my first time. I took it, and I aced it. And they had tough questions. So the first question was, you have a bear, a snake, an elephant, and a horse. Name the horse. That's the horse. The second question's a little bit tough, and then he goes, so the New York Times does a story to show the test that I just aced, and they only used the first question. They didn't go into the other questions. They didn't go in, but toward the end, like they had a question like, pick a number, sir, any number. Okay, 203. Multiply times 9. Divide by 2. Add on 1,324. Subtract 1,292. Sir, multiply it out one more time by 19. What is the answer, sir? Did I get it right? And the one doctor said, I've been doing this test for 20 years. I've never seen anybody ace it. So then what happened, that was in my first term, and that quieted people down, that was good. And then what happened, I did it twice in the second term. So I've taken it and I've aced it all 3 times, I'll tell you, because it is a positive thing. Nice to be still. But remember, I said, and I made the statement, all presidents and vice presidential candidates should be forced to take a cognitive test on intelligence. And I said it loud. Obama couldn't do well on it. Biden wouldn't even get the first question. I don't think he'd get that. Which is the bear? Which is the horse? No, would he get? You know, I have a friend, he's very good politically, but he has a test. He owns, like, stores, little stores. He's not super rich. In fact, he's not even rich. But he makes a living as he goes, but I knew him a long time. I like to keep my old friends. I like to do really much better than them. I don't like friends that become very successful. I like people that are just okay. Even if they're terrible, I like that too. I hate, like when I have lunch with somebody that's really, really successful, I hate it. Because he or she is bragging about how great they are, and I hate that when they do that. Because they stop me from talking about the fact that I became president. But I have a friend, and he said, you know, I have a simple test for a politician. I own stores. I'm really good at it. It's not a complex business. And I say, how would a president do running my store while I'm away on vacation? He said, I take one store, not 3 or 4. And I say, my busiest one Queens Boulevard, Queens. He said, I take a store, and I say, how would he be? And I said, so what's the answer? He said, you would drive it into one of the largest retail empires in the world. Biden wouldn't be able to run the store for one evening. One evening would be just, he said, I give people tests. I put people in my store, and I say, how do you think they do? And he said, Biden wouldn't be able to run a store. We can never let that happen again to our country. We can never let it happen. What he's done, what he's done to our country is unacceptable. And a lot of bad things. We had inflation, but we've got that down. By the way, the oil prices are going to tumble as soon as I finish up with Iran. I was in Iowa. We had it down to $1.85 a gallon in Iowa, but we had it down around the $2 point. And then I said, well, Lutnick, we're going to have to take a trip to, we got Scott Bessent, we got all of them. I said, we just hit 50,000 on the Dow, and I said, that's a record, highest ever. I said, sorry to do this to you, but we're going to have to journey down to the Middle East. They said, why? I said, because Iran is going to have a nuclear weapon if we don't stop them. And I said, we're going to have to do it, and we have stopped them. They're not going to ever have a nuclear weapon. They're never going to have a nuclear weapon. And we'll have that over with soon. It'll be over with soon, and you're going to see numbers like you've never seen, both on the upside and also in terms of costs, you're going to see costs go down. But, you know, the Democrats are the ones that caused all the costs. And they were the ones that caused, when I took over, they caused, the prices were through the roof. I told you before, the inflation was the highest ever, the costs were high. And think of it, they'd constantly come out, their costs. They would constantly come out with the word affordability. I said, they're the ones that caused the problem. I'm in the office 2 days. They are the greatest bullshit artists. I'm in the office 2 days. And the costs have gone through the roof under 4 years of Sleepy Joe or Crooked Joe or both. And I hear these Democrats from all over the place going, affordability. They're the ones that cost it. I didn't cost it. Remember the eggs? My first news conference, 2 or 3 days in, they said, what are you going to do? These people, these corrupt press, they're corrupt. They're corrupt. They know it. They're corrupt. They're totally corrupted. They were saying, what are you going to do about the cost of eggs? I said, what's the problem with eggs? They said, they've gone up 4 times. I said, I just got here. I just got here. They're the greatest bullshit artists, I'm telling you. They said, Trump has driven up the cost of eggs. I just got here, I'm sorry. And within 3 months, our great Secretary of Agriculture has driven them down to the lowest point they've been in a long time. We've got them all down. Now we'll get our energy down. The only thing that has your prices, look, energy is a big ballgame. That's the big one. And we're going to get that down. It'll get down to where it was, maybe even get down lower. But we had it down to a number that was so good they hadn't seen it since my first term. But we terminated the Green New Scam, including the so-called efficiency rule on water heaters, stoves, washers, dryers, light bulbs, saving Americans on average $3,250. And yesterday we eliminated a truly awful Biden regulation on refrigerators and air conditioners and drove the cost of food even in grocery stores where they have freezers. It was called the refrigerant. And according to these lunatics, the refrigerant, which we've had for 40 years, is going to drive people into a state of frenzy. There's nothing wrong with the refrigerant other than sometimes it makes your food too cold. Its alternative costs about twice as much and it doesn't cool your food at all. Everyone that has it practically has gone bankrupt because their food has rotted. So we ended the anti-refrigerant movement in this country. You will now be able to purchase an air conditioner that actually gives you cold air. It's nice. And as you may know, here in New York, I'm fighting relentlessly to end the scourge of congestion pricing. Where Kathy Hope, I have to tell you this. She calls me up a lot. And she can check my phone records. It says Buffalo, New York. She calls me up a lot. I immediately know it's her. Because I do have friends in Buffalo, but they haven't called me too much lately. It says Buffalo. And said, hi, Mr. President, it's Kathy. Hi, could you help me here? Could you help me there? We're having a little problem getting this, and we're trying to get that. Could you give me a little hand? They say, Kathy, you're always killing me. Why the hell would I give you? Well, I just thought I'd try. Okay, thank you very much. And And the next day she goes out, we must stop Donald Trump. It's crazy. Trump derangement syndrome. You know, she's a very, I don't want to say anything negative, she's a very nice woman, but she's never going to take you to the promised land, ever. There will never be a promised land with Kathy. So we're also taking historic actions to make it easier to afford a home, and I signed an executive order banning large Wall Street investment firms from buying up all of the single-family homes all over the world. And I also directed Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and we happen to have the head of Fannie Mae, and where is Mr. Pulte? Right here, Pulte. He's done a great job, that guy. These people know you're becoming very famous, but he's done a good job. But I've instructed him to buy $200 billion in mortgage bonds, bringing interest rates plummeting down much lower than they would have normally been. And we're going to get the rates down. Rates are coming down with the energy. You watch what's going to happen. I had a rotten head of the Fed, and now I have a great head of the Fed today. Kevin Walsh. Kevin was just sworn in today. He's great. It's going to be good. And now Congress is on the cusp of passing the most important piece of housing legislation in a generation. But to be honest with you, housing is all about interest rates. I know more about housing than anybody in history. No president's ever. I built a lot of housing, and they can pass all the bills they want. It's about interest rates. You get the interest rates down, everybody's going to be very, very happy. We're going to get it down very quickly. I support the bill that passed the House this week. Congressman Waller's help now, and it's called the House and Senate. It's a House and Senate housing bill, and it's coming together, and hopefully they'll get it done. But I will say this, Mike, again, it's about interest rates. It's all about interest rates. We get the interest rates down, the housing, you're going to look like a genius. Perhaps most importantly, we've made tremendous strides to bring down the crushing cost of health care. Under my most favored nation agreement that nobody wants to write about, and it's a bigot because we went from the highest price in the entire world to the lowest price in the entire world. And I can't get the fake news to write about it. I think that alone should win the midterms. That alone should win them. It's called most favored nations. In other words, we pay the lowest price of any nation in the world. So we're right now paying many times higher. We're paying sometimes 10, 12 times higher than other nations, like the fat drug. $87 in London, $1,300 in New York City. And a friend of mine who's very fat called me. He said, President, he's crude as hell. He's crude and very smart, highly neurotic. We all know people like that, very smart but highly neurotic. And he was in London, and he's a rich guy, made a lot of money, but he knows the cost of medicine that he takes, probably more than that he takes, this guy. He's begging me not to tell his name because he's actually become quite famous. I tell this story often. So he called me up, he goes, President, he used to call me Donnie. Now he calls me, Mr. President. He said, President, I'm in London, I just made $87 for the fat drug. He said, it's a fat shot. I said, what is it, Ozempic? He said, I don't know what the hell it is. I said, it's not working on you, Charles. Not working at all. It hasn't worked, but he knows the price. He goes, I paid $87, and in New York for 2 weeks ago, I bought the same damn thing for $1,300. And it really made an impression. I mean, look, I've been watching this for a long time. I was very proud to have reduced, in my first term, third year, drugs have always gone up for 28 years, and I got it to a point where it went down 1/8 of a point, and I was so proud of myself. I called the news conference. I said, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to let you know that drugs have gone down in our country for the first time in 28 years. They've gone down by 1/8 of a point. I was so proud. Now they're down by 80%, 90%. 80, 90%. And the fake news doesn't want to write about it. And you could even say 400, 500, 600, or 700%, depending on the way you ask the question. But here today is a local family that has benefited greatly from our policies, especially our historic tax cuts and the great, big, beautiful bill. Kathy Kennedy is a retired special educator. education teacher from Orangetown, and this year she saved more than almost $3,000 on her taxes thanks to the SALT deduction, and congratulations to Kathy. Kathy, you want to come up? Come on up here, Kathy.
I just want to express my sincere gratitude to President Trump for supporting the tax rebates and working alongside our local lawmakers to make our county stronger, safer, and more affordable for families. These efforts create opportunities for our children to remain here, build their futures, invest in our communities, and continue to contribute to the place we proudly call home, Rockland County, New York.
Everybody. I love seeing all the beautiful patriotism out there today. But Mr. President, we wanted to take a moment to sincerely thank you for the policies that you put in place, and they're making a major difference for families like mine. As a father, a small business owner, a home inspector, a real estate investor, changes to the SALT tax deductions and things like the Trump accounts for children have made a meaningful difference in our lives. Because of those policies, we're able to keep more money that we work so hard for and invest into our future instead of simply getting by. We were able to take that money that we saved and invest it directly back into our home inspection business and a land investing business. Two businesses that are giving us the opportunity to create something lasting for our children and the communities that we serve. And more important than the financial side, entrepreneurship is giving us more freedom. Freedom to spend more time together as a family, freedom to build a future on our own terms, and freedom to be there for the moments that are most important with our children. Mr. Trump, we just wanted you to know that there's hard-working American families out there who are benefiting from all that you're doing. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you, and God bless America.
Great job. Thank you. A budding politician, I can say that. I also want to call up the man who fought so hard, harder than anybody else for the SALT deduction, and he's really become a friend of mine. He's a warrior. He's a warrior who fights like hell, and he fights really for you. That's what he's doing. And Mike Lawler, Congressman, come on.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is great to have you here in Rockland County, New York. Now, Mr. President, you moved Rockland County further to the right than any county in New York in 2024, gaining 14 points and becoming the first Republican to win Rockland County as a presidential candidate in over 20 years. On behalf of the people of the 17th Congressional District, I want to thank you for working with me to deliver a big win by lifting the cap on SALT. Over 90% of my constituents were able to fully deduct their state and local taxes, and I thank you for fulfilling that commitment.
He's done a great job. Thank you. Amazing. We're pleased also to be joined by the Secretary of Commerce. He's a big man, very successful guy, and I said, that's the guy I want for Commerce, and he's done a fantastic job. And Howard, you want to say one thing fast? Can you speak fast? Come on, let's get up. Come on. He's great. Done a great job. Howard Lutnick.
My favorite number, $18 trillion. President Trump is bringing in more jobs, more investment, and more factories and more production than anybody ever dreamed, and it is an honor to run the Secretary, be the Secretary of Commerce for the greatest president of all of our lifetimes, Donald Trump.
And I won't ask him to speak, and I introduce him because he's been incredible. The Director of Federal Housing Finance Agency, Bill. Thank you very much, Bill. Along with some absolute warriors, State Assemblyman Mike LaPetri. Mike, thank you, Mike. Great job. Great job. State Senator Peter Oberacker. Peter, thank you, Peter. Great. Co-founder and CEO of Sticker Mule, Anthony Constantino, and County Executive. Wait a minute, Anthony first. Before I get to this County Executive, I gotta give him. Where's Anthony? Hi, Anthony. Thank you. Good job. And the County Executive of Nassau County. Okay. I'm telling you, I said before, Nassau County, it's not possible to get a man of common sense, a man who's Republican and conservative, elected. He's won it in record fashion. It was the biggest upset in New York politics probably 6-7 years ago when he first ran, 7. And I remember I said, that's not possible. Bruce won? And then he won again. Then he won again in record. Now that he's there, it's record. And that county is doing unbelievable. He's running for governor. He's your Republican nominee. He's your conservative nominee. He's your conservative nominee. And he is an unbelievable man, and he will turn this place around so fast. And I promise one thing, when he calls, the President of the United States will answer, and we're going to help him. Come on up here, Bruce. Bruce Blakeman, everybody.